Hey, what's going on? It's me again, guys. Who knew? Who knew? 4 streams in 3 days. I hope you guys are getting sick of me. It's Wednesday, so it means it's First and Ted, our weekly 49er talk show slash podcast or whatever you want to call it. And we're gonna bang the drum on some 49er OTAs and drama and all that other good stuff. But how you doing, Ted?
Can't complain, Aaron. Happy to see you busy. That's always good. We kind of flipped the script a little bit,
Yeah,
honestly,
I'm
because
becoming you with all these streams this week.
yeah, and I've kind of been a little bit of a recluse. A little bit. I've been slowing down my streaming a little bit for the last couple weeks, and
Quality over quantity, right?
yeah, so they say. I mean, I don't know if I have either, but that's the idea.
I think for me, it's just a matter of I'm going back to work next week, so I wanted to take an opportunity to reach out to as many people. I had been invited multiple times by Ryan Hensley. Everybody knows about my little Twitter meltdown I had a couple weeks ago when I was just pissed off at the content creating world, and he was still gracious enough to have me on, even though I was all super crazy on Twitter. And he's a good guy, and it was really chill stream, and I really enjoyed it actually. It was fun. I hope I can do it again with him when he's able. But of course, Wednesdays is all about Aaron and Ted. Uh, it's weird, man. I didn't think we could have anything to talk about coming this part of May as we go into June, but sure enough, Twitter's been freaking set on fire with all these quarterback takes and people talking that they think Sam Darnold is going to be the guy, aka friggin' my most unfavorite 49er announcer of all time, Greg Papa. And just some other stuff, just some talk from streams, some press conference talk that me and Ryan talked about. And I want to ask you a couple of the same questions. So let's start with the OTA talk. 49ers, I think I would assume, I don't know if they're doing a third day of OTAs, but as of the last couple of days, the quarterback talk has kind of been the rule in the roost. And Trey Lance has had his opportunity to kind of be the guy and split reps with Sam Darnold. Are you of the mindset that he can really kind of get his foot in the door and really take a hold of this thing because of the lack of Purdy being there because of the injury? Or is this all for naught? And once the season starts and Purdy's healthy, he's a starting quarterback. What's your take on the OTAs and anything of any interest from other players that caught your eye?
Well, first of all, I'll just say regarding little tiffs that we may have had with other people, anyone. Sometimes the strongest friendships come out of having a little spat, a little fight, a little fisticuffs, whatever it is, whether it's verbal or physical. Sometimes that can build a strong friendship. So you never know. You and Ryan Hensley may end up being the best of friends after all this. Oddly enough, that's the way those things sometimes happen. Regarding, do I think? Were you asking about Sam Darnold or Trey Lance being the guy?
And we have the Purdy situation. He's not there.
He's not there.
My take is, do you think Trey Lance has the ability now, or do you believe that he has a chance to really kind of like reassert himself, or is it an all for naught once we get closer to the season? Like, what's Ted's opinion of the quarterback situation right now, seeing that it's pretty much Sam Darnold and Trey Lance?
I think Lance is going to need at least 4 good starts to start the season to have enough of a book of work to show, what he could do. I mean, and it's going to be rough starting in Pittsburgh. They're like something like 15-1 or 14-2 in their last 16 home openers. So they unlike us, the Steelers tend to start fast. So, I don't think there's anything Trey Lance can do between now and opening day to win the job. If Brock Purdy is ready opening day, I think you go off what Kyle's been saying, that he's the guy. Whether he'll be ready opening day, that's a lot of conjecture. I mean, they're saying he might be throwing next week, which would be a week ahead of schedule. Next week would be week 11. And they were saying 12 weeks until he started throwing a football. So Bash. And Jess and everybody else, Jim Everett.
Yeah, we have Jim Everett in here. I never thought I would ever see him in one of my streams. Or is it Chris Everett, what Jim Rome used to call him?
Yes, that's exactly what Jim
Uh,
Rome used to call him.
just
But
playing.
he's gonna gas up his Rams, and that's fine.
That's okay.
They're no threat, so we don't care. Um, so as far as
Wow.
Trey Lance, I mean, I don't see how he can win the job without some games because I was talking about I just don't trust Kyle when it comes to quarterbacks anymore. I don't trust his evaluation process. I mean, I was saying if we really trusted Kyle, wouldn't Purdy have started week 1 last year?
Yeah.
I mean, I think Purdy did improve some during the season, but I mean, it's hard to say that Purdy wasn't better than Lance last season from what we saw of them. And so Purdy never really had a real chance to win the job. So I don't know that Lance will if Purdy's healthy. Um, I think Lance has a better chance because he's been around longer and he's got more of a track record. He actually has some NFL resume. I was saying he has some flashes of greatness. I don't know if you saw, but I got into it with somebody about that, and they said, "Oh no, only you said that." And I said, "Okay, I'll do a poll," which is what I always do when I have unreasonable people, and it ended up being like over 90% saying that he had flashes of greatness because, of course, he had some really nice throws. He just had too many head scratchers and inaccurate throws and other things to go along with it. So if people were confusing it of me saying he was great, and I was definitely not saying that. Not even sure I'd say Lance was good yet, but I wouldn't say he isn't because we haven't seen him with CMC. We haven't seen him much with Kittle. So it's hard to say. But, ultimately, Lance, just needs a chance. We need to see what he's got. You cannot trade this guy away until we know what he is. You can't buy that high and sell low. You can't let this guy walk and become the next Patrick Mahomes or even, I don't know, the next Dak Prescott on another team. Um, Maybe a little better than Dak, let's say, but ultimately a good solid franchise quarterback. You can't let that happen and then have it turn out that Purdy was really good in 2022, but either the UCL held him back or just things aren't as favorable as they were in 2022. We obviously had the number one D. We had all our weapons healthy. We had our whole line healthy. And while Purdy was healthy, we did really well. But it's hard to say that we can have that again, especially now that we lost McGlinchey, we lost Aziz Al-Shire, we lost Mosley, we lost Jim Ward.
Yep.
Yeah. There's a lot of people we lost already. And I think Hargrave will make up for a lot of that
Yes.
in the other additions that we made. But again, the chances of us being so healthy to start and go through the playoffs, other than obviously Purdy getting injured in the NFC Championship game, is pretty unlikely.
My whole thing, and they're talking about the, me and Ryan are talking about this, just like when you talk about like the throwing mechanics of Trey Lance and if they improved, if they not improved, it's so hard. But unless you're there filming, unless you're watching coach film from train camp, because they do film practices, you cannot make anything out from videos that you see on Twitter or YouTube. You just can't. Now, if you're a quarterback guru and that's your specialty and you can make something out of a clip and do a whole breakdown, like someone maybe like JT O'Sullivan, he has his own YouTube channel. He was a quarterback at one point. I'll listen to that guy. But there's so much of OTAs that is more or less throwing in a t-shirt and a helmet, right? For me, if he's going to steal this job back and reclaim it and then become the guy that we all want him to be, this is his time to shine. And I think OTAs is the first part of it. I think training camp will build on top of that. If he has a strong preseason, it'll build on top of it. And he's going to start, like you said, he's probably going to open the season. He has to make that decision for Kyle and John that he's not going to be taken out of the lineup. So I feel like as much as it's boring to talk about unpadded practices with guys that are not going full speed, for a guy like Trey Lance, it's a huge, huge thing. And of course, there was the big to-do that's all over Twitter. It's a very energetic conversation about where people stand with Trey Lance and Brock Purdy.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to I'll give you my side of this real quickly.
All right.
I was all in on Brock Purdy last year. I fell for the Jimmy Garoppolo 2017 thing all over again because I want the 49ers to win, and I thought he gave them the best chance. And if I had to pick tomorrow who I'd want to start a playoff game, I would go with Brock.
Absolutely.
But just like you can't judge somebody based off 8 games, you can't judge somebody as a bust off of 4 starts. You just cannot.
Right.
That is illogical. It is reckless. It's just plain uneducated to do that. You can't call somebody an all-pro or a Pro Bowl type quarterback based off 8 starts with a loaded roster, with a great defense, with essentially the best head coach / play caller on minus Andy Reid and maybe the coach of the Rams. Like his name's escaping me right now, Sean McVay.
Mm-hmm.
I want to see Trey in the same situation. I want to be able to measure him with the same grading. They call it the sliding scale or whatever. I want to be able to be able to judge him that way, and to make any type of proclamation on any of it is just stupidly irresponsible. It's dumb. And anybody who says that Brock Purdy is the guy and there's nobody better and that Trey Lance is a bum is just to me. It's illogical. Like I said, I want to see Trey Lance because I think the one thing that Trey Lance does that Brock Purdy does not is I feel like if he's ever able to reach his potential, he's the guy that as this team starts to break up, as this team starts to lose guys, people retire, people move on. You have a quarterback that essentially can not only run the offense as is and do all the mise en place, all the regular stuff, but essentially can take the game into his own hands and do stuff with his athleticism and his arm strength that just Brock Purdy cannot do. And I think that's what the Niners drafted him for. And Brock Purdy is essentially a super efficient, non-turnover version of Jimmy Garoppolo. And I feel like you can't win championships with quarterbacks like that. I feel like they have a glass ceiling that they just won't be able to break when you go against the Brock. You go against the Mahomes, or you go against the Allens, or you go against the Joe Burrows of the NFL. But that's just my opinion. I don't know what you think about it. I very much agree a lot with Ryan Hensley's take on it, and I know that's not
the dink and dunk. It's a hot topic. It's a hot topic.
He is. I feel like what else did? Go ahead.
Here's what I said. I said I'm not going to say Brock is dink and dunk because he does throw. There you go.
Who wants the mid cards take? Right.
Of course, we all want it. So, I'm not going to sit here and say he's dink and dunk, but I will say that Brock has limited arm strength. And I was saying today on the timeline, and somebody said, well, arm strength isn't the most important thing. And I said, yeah, it's not the most important thing. But, Brock has limited arm strength. Brock has limited height. Brock has limited top speed running. He's quick. He makes great decisions. He's accurate. I mean, like almost everything else is like elite with Brock. Mm-hmm. But those 3 things, then people say, well, quarterbacks, every quarterback has a flaw. Yeah, every quarterback has a flaw, except for maybe Mahomes. He's probably the closest thing to perfect there is. But it doesn't mean we should settle for one with lots of flaws. So, ultimately, and let me back up and say, look, I really like Brock Purdy. I really like what he did. I mean, this offense has never looked better than it looked those last 6 games of the season last year and the first 2 playoff games with Brock Purdy under Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco. Now, the offense has looked better in 2016 with the Falcons with Matt Ryan. And people say, oh, Julio Jones. Yeah, Julio Jones is better. And peak Julio Jones, which I think that was peak of him then, is better than any of our weapons that we have now.
True.
But our weapons group is way better than what they had when you have, Debo, Kittle, Ayuk, Juszczyk, CMC, Jennings. I mean, you just go down the list. It's a murderer's row in our weapons group. Like basically every other weapon is way better than what the Falcons had, except for that one wide receiver one. And Debo is not as far off when it's peak Debo as you might think from Julio Jones. Because one thing about Julio is he didn't score a lot of TDs. He racked up a lot of yards, but he was never a prolific red zone TD threat. or possession receiver threat, right? He would just annihilate people with huge bombs. But anyway, bottom line is, so yeah, there's more we can do with this offense than what Purdy does. And basically when the whole thing came out, the dink and dunk gate, I was like DMing people, and I won't say who I was DMing, but certain people saying like, "Oh, I'm Team Ryan," and and I never said, like I said, never said he's dink and dunk, but I do think he has limited arm. I think you can really see the highlight of Brock's limited arm. Two throws really stick out for me, and they're both in the same game against the Raiders. And there was one that he threw to Kittle that was intercepted, and another one to Juwan Jennings that was like a dropped interception or at least a PBU. And I'm saying both of those are TDs if you have a strong arm quarterback. So that those are two that highlight his limited arm strength to me. And so basically I was like DMing people saying I'm Team Ryan. And you know me, I was like, don't be a wimp, Ted. I was like, just do it. So I did all these tweets based on that thing. And I don't know if you want me to read them off or not.
Go ahead.
But basically there's a lot of things I disagreed with Larry Krueger on. And so I was like, I'm not going to hide in DMs. I'm going to go out and say it. And if somebody wants to block me over it, then so be it. But I'm not going to, I'm not going to shy away from it. That's just not the way I am. And so I said, Kyle isn't always right, especially when it comes to the quarterback position, because they were saying, oh, more than Kyle, more than Kyle. And it's like, yeah, sometimes we do know more than Kyle, not about everything, but about sometimes. I think we do. And I said, good coaches are always trying to improve even after wins, because it was like, oh, we won all these games. But it's like, you should always be trying to make your team better, even when you're winning. You should always be looking for what you can do to optimize. So I said, good ideas can come from anywhere, even us non-credentialed peasants, because there was some talk about all the credible people. None of them would say that about Purdy. And then I said, Purdy may not be dink and dunk, but he definitely had a limited arm and could not make all the throws. And that was before the UCL surgery. So we don't know what he'll be after, but he might lose arm strength. Sometimes you gain, sometimes you lose. We just don't know. There's so little data on these UCL repair plus internal brace. It's just him and Nick Mullins as far as NFL quarterbacks that have had this surgery. I said, then there was a talk about like, well, if Lance gets CMC, then that'll make him more of a dink and dunk passer. And I said, CMC's gravity takes attention away from 49ers deep threats, even if he doesn't go deep himself. So, I just don't agree that having CMC will mean that Lance will all of a sudden start throwing, not throw deep because of that. I think it'll be both. I said, just because some big arm quarterbacks have been bust doesn't mean that arm strength isn't important. So I'm not saying it's the most important thing. I would never say that. I think accuracy and timing, Kyle led with yesterday, those are crazy important. But arm strength is important. And it's like, if you're missing arm strength and height and top speed of running, then those things start to add up. That was one row of them. And then there was one more row where I said, no quarterback is perfect, but it doesn't mean we should settle for a quarterback with lots of imperfections. Said, if Brock has 4 to 5 traits that make up for his limited arm, then his arm is limited. Coaches and GMs and scouts sometimes think things without saying them publicly, because he was saying, oh, no credible people are saying this. So that doesn't mean they're not thinking it. I said, if you want to win a Super Bowl, then you should be prepared to beat Patrick Mahomes to do so, because that was sort of Ryan's doomsday scenario. Was like, oh, I don't know if we can come back if Patrick Mahomes gets ahead of us in a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. And Larry's like, oh, why are you worrying about that? And it's like, well, because if you want to win a Super Bowl, you got to worry about beating Patrick Mahomes.
That's right.
So, I mean, realistically, right? He's been to 3 of the last 4.
We don't match up with the Kansas City Chiefs very well. We don't. It's one of those things. The Eagles showed you how you got to play them. You can't make any mistakes, no turnovers, and you literally have to score touchdowns every single time you have the ball. And the Eagles supposedly had this incredible defense. Okay, so I don't know. That's just
except for they were a little weak against the run, and Pacheco ran well against them.
He did.
So
he ran fantastic.
And if you look at our first half against them, we were doing okay in the first half. It's just Dre Greenlaw got injured. We didn't have Armstead. Bosa and Charvarius Ward both had pulled groins. Jimmy Ward was back in his first game, and he was putting the club on his hand. And Jimmy threw that stupid interception to end the half. I mean, so and granted, Mahomes threw one too that helped us early in the game. Bottom line is, I don't think we match up as badly as the final score of that game looked.
Okay. No, we were close. You're right. We were close in the
especially
third
not towards
quarter.
the end of the year. And also, CMC was barely even knew what to do in that game. He'd been here for a practice and a half. Some other things I said was QB win. If QB wins are misleading for Jimmy G, then they can be misleading for any quarterback. And there was something else I said about like the coaches and GMs sometimes say things without saying them publicly. I said actually, sometimes coaches and GMs say the exact opposite of what they're thinking to be misleading. We know Kyle does that all the time. So anyway, bottom line is, I'm not going to sit here and say Brock is dink and dunk because he does enough well with like those 10 to 20 yard passes where he does open up the field some. He does take some guys out of the box. But I think we can do so much more with 20 plus, 30 plus yard passes that I can see Lance doing for us. And so I'm not saying that I want Lance just because he has a big arm. I'm saying Lance because he has a big arm. He's tall. And I think he can learn to do the things that Brock does well. A lot of the things that Brock does well come with experience. And people say, oh, well, people don't get better with accuracy. I'm like, well, Josh Allen and Steve Young sure did, so and there's more. Those are just two of the most glaring examples. So these are some of the arguments I've been having on Twitter lately.
The thing you can't. Here's the thing, and I agree. Okay, so he's not dink and dunk, but he's definitely not a strong arm quarterback. Like he has a
requisite arm strength. It's true, but you want way more than that, right?
You can scheme things with him. My thing is, I want a quarterback who doesn't need to have plays schemed open. I want a quarterback that can scheme with his mobility and his arm strength and the fact that he can make the 40-yard on a rope, throw in bad weather, you know what I mean? Where we don't have to sit on the ball and run the ball constantly all the time. Again, I am a big Purdy fan, but I just think that Trey Lance, if he could just figure out the intermediate game, can become essentially what the Eagles had last year in Jalen Hurts. I see a lot of Jalen Hurts in Trey Lance. He might never be Mahomes. Nobody's going to be Mahomes. Mahomes is probably one of the greatest quarterbacks that's ever played in the NFL, and his career is not even half. He's in the prime.
He's on track. He's on track for it.
He's incredible. You just people get it's like they just sit and they anchor their feet and they just won't move off of stuff. Two things can be true. Brock Purdy can be an awesome player that propelled us and did a lot and was efficient, but he also plays with a loaded roster. I want to see him play with guys leaving the team. I think with a guy like Trey Lance, who has the ability to run around and make and go and move with his feet and also hit the big throws, the 20 or 25 yard, out and the corner route or the outs, all the different types of plays that you can't run with guys like Garoppolo and guys like Brock Purdy. I don't know, man. I hate how a guy can play 8 games, and of course now he's the greatest things in sliced bread, and a guy can only play 4. One guy can play 8 games, and he's the second coming of Joe Montana, and one guy can play 4 games, he's a bust. How is that? How can you make that argument? How can both of those things exist in the same universe? Like, how can you say that about somebody? That's the part that gets me. I'm not Go ahead.
Preconceived ideas.
It is. It's a lot of preconceived notions with people. They come in and they already have a mindset set on a player. And this whole argument that Sam Darnold is going to somehow come in and be the franchise quarterback. Let's go to the Papa take. Whoa. First of all, I don't like his commentating. I can't stand his cadence, the way he sounds. I don't like Tim Ryan. I don't like Tim Ryan. I think Tim Ryan is just don't like it. But I'm just not of the mindset a guy like who's already shown in the NFL what he is, and all of a sudden he's going to come to the 49ers and become Steve Young coming away from the Bucks. Like it just doesn't it's just I don't know. I just don't like Greg Papa on that one. And if you listen to the clip, he completely steps over uh, Lance on talking. He doesn't say anything about Trey Lance. He goes from Brock Purdy to Sam Darnold. And I don't know why these guys have such an affinity and such an obsession and such a stiffy for such a like essentially a bust. A guy who's drafted or within the top 5 and has proven that he's not a great NFL quarterback. So I don't know. I'm pro 49ers winning a championship. I'm all for Brock Purdy. If Brock Purdy ends up being the guy long term and he can do things with all his deficiencies and he's essentially like a poor man's Drew Brees the rest of his career and he's clutch and he wins us Super Bowls, I'll be the first guy to jump on the bandwagon. But at the same time, I think we just have to give Trey Lance his share of the pie and give him a chance to, you know, get his time on the field, get his, licks, whatever it is. And once that happens and he's played enough downs or you think you've seen enough of him, then you can make your comparisons or your, takeaways from his game and say, okay, he's not the guy. He's never going to be the guy. But you can't do that. There hasn't been enough of it.
And we want the strongest QB room possible for the playoffs. That means Lance has to play. And like I said, you don't buy high and sell low. And so you got to give Lance a chance to improve his value. If you are going to ultimately trade him, like let him build some value first. Don't trade him when he's at his, nadir or, low point. You got to let him rebound a little bit and at least get some value. But like I said, if he goes off and becomes a great QB somewhere else, Kyle will never live it down. It'll be worse than 28-3.
To me too, it's like if he becomes successful in another squad, and we had him in our building, that's fireable offense for GM and head coach. I'm sorry, I love Kyle Shanahan as coach, but it's just I don't know, man. I can't. It's the Niners until they figure out their quarterback situation. This is going to be in every offseason, every year top, which is great if you make content or write articles. But if you're a fan, it's absolutely nauseating. I can't stand it. I would love to have a quarterback.
And I would
love to have a quarterback like that, like a Patrick Mahomes, that we could talk about having, a 45 touchdown season, 6 interceptions, Super Bowl MVP, league MVP. I'd love to have that kind of quarterback on the 49ers. You kidding me?
Yeah. Well, that's what I was saying. Kyle's a genius with everything except for QB, but that's a big but. That's a big but.
Aaron, he says, to be fair, it sounds like you're the last guy to jump on the bandwagon if you're waiting until we get Super Bowls. He's played great. He played great. Let's wait until he plays bad and it goes south. Trying to figure out, is that me waiting for? I don't understand what he was trying to say. Can you decipher that?
To be fair, it sounds like you'll be the last guy to jump on the bandwagon if you're waiting until we get Super Bowls. In other words, he's like saying, show some faith and believe in the guy. I mean, I believe we could have won the Super Bowl with Purdy in 2022. I mean, I think I've said it a bunch of times, 50-50 against the Eagles, maybe a little less than that against the Chiefs. But, ultimately with if Lance hits his ceiling, we'll be dog walking these teams. It won't even be close. Not even the best teams, even the Chiefs will be like, oh, how do we beat the Niners instead of us worrying about how to beat them?
To me, until you find your quarterback, you should always be searching.
Absolutely.
That's how I look at it. And I don't think we have yet because we haven't seen what Trey Lance can do on a full-time basis.
Well, wait a minute. Brendan Allen was 6 for 6 or 7 for 7.
Yeah, he was 6 for 6 in practice, so he must be the best quarterback we've had.
Yeah. So I think search no more, Aaron.
I just like the fact that
your prayers have been answered.
The organization shut down Ian Rappaport with that whole stupid talk about Sam Darnold. They pretty much told him to shut his pie hole, shut his yapper.
Yeah, I think it was Lynch feeding information, and Kyle finally just put the kibosh on it. I think that's what happened. if I had to
So
guess.
Terradome apparently doesn't agree on, which is
Oh,
crazy. He
oh,
says
he
you're something like
loves
Connie Taylor.
he loves some Brock Purdy. So
I
he said
loved
we were
him
high
last year.
earlier.
I no,
Just
but you don't understand. I'm big on him too. I just think that there's always room for improvement. I think
yeah.
people are missing the point of if he's the guy all year and we win, I'm fine. But what we Trey just to write off Trey Lance and say he's damaged goods and he's a bust after 4 starts is insane.
Especially since, like I said, he didn't have CMC, barely had Kittle. A lot of people point to the Bears game. Mitchell got hurt early in the first quarter. I mean, all right, here's what I've been arguing with some people about, which is like, yeah, Lance was not great in the Bears game, but I would say he was better than Fields was. It's just that
Fields
our
had
defense,
one big throw from a busted play.
yeah, and our defense gave up 3 extending drives on every single
Yeah.
touchdown drive. And our offensive line was a sieve. Their defensive end got a sack and a half against us. I don't think he had a sack and a half the rest of the season. And then Debo had the fumble that he lost inside the red zone. That's 3 to 7 points plus momentum. And then also one that I forgot for a while and reminded me of myself of today was Gibson dropped an interception in that game. And it's hard to fault him because he had 5 more during the regular season.
Yeah, he did really
But
well
he
last
did
year.
he did incredibly well. But in that game, he dropped one that really made a huge difference. So, yes, Lance threw an interception late in the game. Yes, it sort of sealed the game. But I will say, if it hadn't been for the monsoon, I'm not sure if it would have. Like, we got the ball back, but nobody was going to score once the sky opened up, and it was just like a river of water pouring onto the field. It was unplayable at that point, and so ultimately, like, I'm not sitting here trying to say Lance doesn't deserve any grief for that, but he did make 3 really beautiful throws in that game. That was sort of what I was getting at with the flashes of greatness comment. Was he's had great throws in every game he's played, whether it was the half against Seattle, the Cards game, he had a couple nice ones. Obviously, in the Texans game, there were 2 or 3 really nice ones, including the one to Debo, which might be his best throw of his career. And then, even the Bears game, and with a sopping wet football, he made some really nice throws in the game. Now, he made some others that weren't nice. The overthrow of Croft, the short one that he missed to Debo. There was a few kind of.
He had a lot of things that were going against him too, with the mechanic issues, with his finger, with the dead arm stuff. He's finally healthy, and I know everyone's saying there's a lot of excuses, and excuses are, that's true. You can say that they're excuses. Luke Luna said this, and I agree with the whole saying, "A bird in the hand is worth 2 in the bush." I understand that Montana didn't have upside. Montana was what he was. He was an accurate quarterback with a decent arm, skinny, kind of, fragile, can move around a little bit. You see, but you have a bird in the hand from what you've seen, not saying Purdy's Montana, just saying upside is hope. Again, agreed. I'm just saying with Purdy not hopefully with Purdy not starting the season, it looks like open mind is a great thing to have because what if Lance shines? Now you have a good problem. You have essentially 2 starting quarterbacks. What if Purdy can't play till mid-October and you're 6-0 with Trey Lance? Are you going to bench Trey Lance to bring in Brock Purdy, or are you going to go with the hot hand? That's all I'm saying. Like, if he's playing well and the Niners are winning and he hasn't given you a reason to take him out, and this is what you drafted him for anyways, wouldn't you stay with him, or are you benching him? I just, I'll put it this way: if all things were even, and Brock Purdy doesn't get hurt in the NFC Championship game, Brock Purdy is the unquestioned starter going into this season. I agree with that. I'm just saying he did get hurt. He did get hurt, and he did get injured, and now Trey Lance is going to have that time again. So, are you going to swap him out if he loses games at Game 7? That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
Who's Game 7? The Vikings?
Say we start 6-0 and then Brock loses or Purdy loses Game 7. Do we take him out and put Purdy back in? You know something? Listen, the fact that we're all having this conversation and we're all,
No, if you're 6-1, you leave the quarterback in.
right. But
Yes.
I'm saying it sucks that we, as a franchise, we have all
No,
these great players and all these great positions, and the one thing we always have a question
I
mark.
mean, okay. I guess it also depends on how we're playing, right? I mean, if we're winning and Lance is stinking it up, and we're 6-1, yeah, you put Purdy in. If we're losing, the better question is, if we're losing and Lance is playing great, then what do you do, right? Um, or I mean, obviously, if we're winning and Lance is playing great, I think there's no question there either. So I think those are the real questions are like, or if we're middle of the road record wise, Lance is playing okay, then what do you do? I don't know. That's the tougher questions, is the more of the periphery ones.
Randy Daytona makes a good point. He says it's a terrible situation, hence the phrase "you have two QBs, two QBs, you have done." It's true. If you don't have an essentially a bona fide starter, you don't have any starters. My thing is that the Niners drafted Trey Lance to be that guy, the franchise guy. He's the modern quarterback, big arm, big, can move, athletic, all those things. And Brock Purdy is essentially Rudy. He's the hard luck, last guy drafted, huge chip on his shoulder, doesn't have a lot of talent, but he's got a lot of moxie. A lot of people gravitate toward that guy because they see a lot of themselves in a guy like Brock Purdy, a guy who, doesn't have the requisite size, doesn't have the requisite arm strength, but just wins. And we don't know how he wins, but he just wins. And I can understand the love for him. All I'm saying is we're going to see Trey Lance to start the season. And whether we like it or not, we're going to get a chance to see if he has what it takes. So I'm not saying you have to, if you don't like, I feel like some people almost sound like they're going to boycott not watching 49er games if Trey Lance is a starter, which I think is absolutely silly. Listen, if Brock Purdy started week 1 and was the starter for the whole season, I'm going to watch every 49ers game. I'm not going to not watch. So I love everybody that you all have different opinions. I don't hate anybody's opinions. I'm in the middle. I have opinions for both sides of it. I don't want people to think that I'm anti this or anti that. I just understand. I understand the arguments that Ryan and Larry had, and I kind of agree a lot with Ryan, just for the simple fact that you just haven't seen enough from Trey Lance, and Trey Lance has those physical traits that can, if let to grow, can be franchise changing, all pro, superstar type quarterback. Or you go with the guy that essentially is going to be efficient, they'll win you games, but he's never going to get you over the top. So I don't know.
And I like Larry Krueger a lot. I just disagreed with him there. So
you can disagree with somebody and still be cool with them.
Exactly.
Some people can, not always.
Truth is more important to me than how I feel about somebody as a friend. It's like, what do I believe? And that's what I'm going to go with. And I respect Ryan for kind of saying that too. He's like, I don't care what this or that expert said. This is my opinion, and that's why I'm sticking to it.
And I don't like that if somebody has qualifications means that they're right and you're wrong. Just because you have a degree in sports, you have a communications degree, or you went to school for journalism, doesn't always mean you're right. You're more likely to have people watch you. That's why those guys get, ass loads of views. I understand that. If I'm going to have to pick between a carpenter who's a master carpenter or an apprentice to do work on my house, I'm going to pick the guy that has more experience. I'm not going to say, you know what, I really like the other guy, so I'm just going to give it a shot with my house with tons of money involved. No, you're going to go with the top. I understand why people, but it doesn't always mean just because they're the top guy and they have all this credential behind them that they're always right. Sometimes they're wrong.
Well, and some of the top guys make a ton of dough just by being wrong all the time. Yeah. And just by doing hot takes that are basically
what's
wrong.
His name? The guy that does the show with Chris Sims.
Yeah,
he got
Florio.
Called out by that. Florio's a chode, okay?
Yeah, he got called out by Howie Roseman, the GM of the Eagles,
and he's trying to get him to say things. I'm like, I love seeing that.
I was like, I hate Florio even more now because he made me side with the Eagles front office guy, the
I
GM
never
from
thought
the
I would
Eagles.
hide with the I never thought I would side with the Eagles front office. Florio
Yeah,
is very unlikable. See, there is a case where it's a guy who has a platform and he's very well known and he don't jack crap about the 49ers. He don't.
no, he's always wrong about us.
Always.
I mean, it's almost like he tries. He just knows he gets clicks. That's the thing is, some of these people are unscrupulous and they don't care about being right. They just care about the bottom line and lining their pockets. And you can
Yeah,
get
people just want to
rich
line their
saying
pocket.
stupid
Yep.
things about the Niners.
And it
Absolutely.
and it works. Hey, if I had the chance to do that too, I'm not gonna lie, I'd probably be putting out bad takes all the time. Look at friggin' what's his name? Not Stephen A. Smith, but the other dummy that he used to do a show with.
Um, I mean, I don't know.
It's not Stephen A. You guys know who I'm talking about, not Stephen A.
Skip Sayless.
Skip Bayless. He's horrendous, but he has a massive
Yeah.
following and makes a ton of money. So
And
again,
occasionally I agree with Skip, but yeah, it's definitely it's the exception rather than the rule.
you got
For
Jim Everett
sure.
the Great in here with his Rams propaganda, talking about how we're the '94 champs. It's okay, man. It's okay. It's all right.
And just ask
Still,
them
it's
why
been
why they haven't caught
it's
up.
been almost 30 years, and you still don't have as many championships. So keep talking.
Not even half. And if we're being honest, the St. Louis fans aren't fans of LA, and the LA fans aren't fans of St.
Yeah,
Louis.
like
They each really only have one.
you guys can't
So
even fill your own home stadium.
Levi's South.
You won the Super Bowl and we out. Like, come on now. Like, okay, you don't get me started. But anyways, listen, I
They
love
ruined
everybody
it
in the
back.
chat. I love everybody in the chat. I want you guys to know that just because we have disagreements. Listen, I have a nephew who's a LeBron James fan. Okay.
Oh,
And I'm a Michael Jordan guy. Okay. We get
there
into
we go. The
massive,
real goat.
massive, massive arguments about who's the GOAT. Okay. And I still love him. And I'll do anything for him. I'll take a bullet for him. But damn it, I'm not going to agree. I'm not going to bend. And he knows it, and he won't either. And he'll get loud, and he'll try to he thinks being louder means you're right, and I'm just like
Yeah.
not going to. I always
Poor,
tell my
poor,
nephew this. I say, guess
poor.
what?
Oh God.
Jordan has been retired for 20 years, and he's still more worldwide famous and has more of an influence on the NBA as a whole. And LeBron's been playing for 20 years. Like, that's all I always go with them. Like, there's Jordan's, I always tell him he's a legend. He's a living legend. He's Muhammad Ali. He's Babe Ruth. You know what I mean? That's who Michael Jordan is. And, he just, I don't know. It is what it is. At the end of the day, it doesn't really change our lives. They're rich. We're not. So who really cares?
Don't tell him my new name for him. Then LeBroom got swept.
Oh, LeBron James. Oh, man. I always just call him McFlop. I kind of have a McFloppy name for him.
LaFlop, yeah.
LaFlop, because he's always acting like he got shot by a freaking sniper bullet every single time he goes down.
And then he denied it too. That's the
Ask your
worst
nephew
part.
about how many times Braun got swept. I don't want to have a conversation with him, Bash, because he gets really loud.
It's the third time.
My mom
One
is
in
always,
each decade.
yeah, my mom always is just like, enough! And my brother's like, I gotta go. I'm leaving. Because me and him just keep going and going and going. And he's always like, oh, look at his competition and look at Jordan's competition. You guys are going against, the whole plumbers things and electricians. I'm just like,
That's what Jordan
whatever.
made it look like, but that wasn't the case.
Pterodome says Jordan 6 for 6 MVPs, Defensive Player of the Years, etc. to match. Only one in history of the game. Yeah, Jordan, LeBron for what? And I know this is a 49ers show, so don't get mad. LeBron has taken 20 years to try to match Jordan. He has all these points and all these things that he's done. He still doesn't have as many chips, and he still doesn't have the respect or the fear of the masses like Jordan did. And Jordan's been retired for 20 years. That's all I'm saying. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's just opinions. Opinions are like your butthole. Everybody has one. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. So it's just conversation. We'll never see them play against each other. I'm a Montana guy. I think Brady's the GOAT, I guess, but he had a lot of things that happened during his career when he was in New England that were sketchy. And I always think that kind of marks against him. But, that's for me. That's for me.
Damn,
I'm a Joe guy.
the chat is going off, man. I don't
Yeah,
know how you're
everybody's
keeping
like
up
really
with
like
it.
the quarterback talk gets everybody kind of really pissy and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm a
Ty
I'm a
Austin.
jet. Oh,
LeBron can be
Luna
a
says I'm
goat.
a
Jordan is
Jazz
a
fan.
basketball
MJ
fan.
shattered my heart, but he's the goat, dude. I think if you live, my nephew made a good point. He says you haven't watched basketball in 20 years, so you can't really give opinions on basketball. He's right. I can give opinions on the 90s though, in the late 80s. You know what I mean? Because I experienced it, I watched it. But there is some truth to that. If you haven't watched NBA religiously in 20 years, you really have
There
no
were
place talking.
so many great players that didn't get chips because of Jordan. I mean, there's the mailman, and John Stockton for the Jazz. They're a prolific duo. Another one would
But I
be
can work
Charles Barkley, who was a great player and never got a chip because of Michael Jordan. Another one would be Gary Payton and Sean Kemp and the Sonics.
Yep.
Ran into the Bulls.
Clyde Drexler and the
Hakeem finally got two, but it was the 2 years that Jordan played baseball. He never won, before that or after when Jordan was playing for the 2 3-peats that bookended that. So
to me, and I'll take this back to the 49ers. Say what you want about Joe Montana and his lack of arm strength, and maybe he wasn't a big guy. Montana beat his counterparts in the Super Bowl. If Elway and Marino were the two big quarterbacks, and I know it's a team sport, but he's 2-0 against two Hall of Fame quarterbacks in his career. He went against Boomer Esiason too. I don't think I don't think Boomer Esiason is even on the same level. But like, if you're gonna go that route, Montana head to head, Marino had a really good team, and Montana was a better quarterback in that game. And against Denver, Montana put on a master class in that game. 5 touchdowns. I think he had like 5 incompletions. At one point, he had like, I don't even know, 20. I don't know how many completions in a row. Montana's 89-90 playoffs were some of the best quarterback football I've ever seen. So
the thing with Marino was he didn't really have much of a run game and he didn't have any defense. So that was the problem with the Dolphins. He was
Beto says
prolific.
championships don't mean anything. They do if you want. Okay, I'll put it this way with the championships. Jerry Rice, he's the GOAT, right? At his particular position. Not only does he have the requisite championships, but he's got every record imaginable. So you put those two things together, essentially that's the argument, right? If Jerry Rice had all those records but didn't win, people could take shots at him and say, he was a stat stuffer. He only did it for the stats. He never won nothing. I think championships, along with statistics, or at least being reasonably statistically, competitive with other players in your era, will give you that kind of bump. Montana didn't play as long as Tom Brady did. And he didn't throw the ball. It was a different era, and he was hurt. So you get a healthy Montana that played until he was 45, and we might have a completely different conversation. But
I mean, he has a point. He's saying the Buccaneers QB, that's Brad Johnson.
yeah, Brad Johnson was horrible.
Yeah, but these are the exceptions to the rule. You got your Brad Johnson, you got your Trent Dilfer, you got even I'd say Jim McMahon from the Bears.
Yeah, for every team that has a great quarterback like Mahomes, Burrow, the Bills have a good quarterback. For every team, then you have a team like the 49ers that gets to the Super Bowl with the Jimmy Garoppolo. Mm-hmm. It happens. That's
Eagles with Nick Foles. I would even say Eli Manning, but Eli Manning played pretty well in those playoffs to get there. But he definitely had pedestrian regular seasons.
Emiliano makes a good point because my nephew said the same thing. He says, I kind of like LeBron better as a person despite his cheesiness more than MJ. But MJ was a killer on the court and objectively the GOAT. In my opinion, basically, I'd rather have LeBron James be the GOAT than MJ. Yeah, my nephew made a good point about Michael Jordan. If he was playing today with all his, the betting and all the stuff and his scandals and stuff, like he probably would have been looked at in a way different light. And it's true. Listen, Joe Montana, as a retired person, is way crustier than he was as a player. My opinion is him as a person after he retired. I really don't like him too much.
Me neither.
I like Steve Young more. And I hated Steve Young growing up. I loved Montana. As a player, Montana's my guy. As a person, I like Steve Young. So just Montana just comes off as like a pompous guy who just all he cares about is money. He almost kind of like looks back at his 49er career as like something to hate, which I never understand.
Well,
Like
because
you made
he was
millions of
butthurt that
dollars,
we let him go to KC.
but and I was butthurt too. But in the big picture, him leaving was the best thing that ever happened because Steve Young played till 1999. Montana would have been retired like a year or two later. So they made the right choice.
I thought so, even at the time. Yeah, I was ready, but
Oh, see, Ty Elson's taking age shots at Beto. He said Beto watched the 1983 Super. Oh no, I thought it said 63. Yeah, Beto. For everyone who doesn't know, from Niner Sickness podcast, Beto in every Super Bowl the 49ers won, he was live. He saw every
but
single one of
'83
them.
was the Redskins, wasn't it?
Yeah, 83 was the year that we lost to the Redskins with that BS pass interference call on Ronnie Lott, correct?
I'm not sure, but
We were a really
I
good
remember
team that
the
year.
Redskins won right before we beat Miami. I thought, and
Yeah,
that was
Steve
part of the
Serafimo,
Joe Gibbs 3 Super Bowls with 3 different QBs.
that's a pretty good thing if you think about it. You can win a Super Bowl with three different quarterbacks. Steve Serafimo said Montana not showing up to Super Bowl MVP's award because not paid for it. Yeah, Montana's really weird about like if he doesn't have something to like push or product, like I saw him, I forgot what show he was on. I'm like, geez, I wonder how much they had to pay him to come on. Like I don't know. People are weird, man. That's why you don't, as kids, don't believe in your heroes as sports athletes. They're bad people, a lot of them. Go look up to firemen and policemen or your dad or your mom. Don't look at athletes because athletes
Uh,
are flawed, a lot of them.
yeah, but I would say I think Purdy and Lance are both really good people. I
Oh,
think they're two
well, at
exceptions.
least we know from the media, they
And
come
and
off
maybe they'll turn
really
into dicks when
genuine.
they're really good for a long time. So who knows? But right now, they both seem to be like A1
To me,
personality people.
I've liked that they're both nice guys, but I sometimes think that you have to have a little bit of an ego to be great. There has to be a little jerk in you. I feel like being nice is great and being a good teammate is awesome. But at the end of the day, like there has to be a little bit of that competitive fire where you start screaming and yelling. That's why I like that Brock Purdy got after some of his teammates last year, and he's essentially a seventh round pick, last pick in the draft. I like that about him. I wish Trey would be more firm and be like ripping guys in the ass, but I don't think Trey feels that he can because he just hasn't had the requisite time on the field. So I know this has been kind of a weird chat and we're talking about all sorts of stuff, but trying to think.
Should we
Uh,
talk about Kyle being hopeful that Purdy will be ready week 1? And some people say, "Oh, that's it. He's going to be ready week 1."
Yeah,
Kyle said
so
it's hopeful,
Purdy's supposed to be able to throw next week. That's the
hmm
talk.
which
And
would be a
Kyle
week
is,
early. That'd be 11
yeah,
weeks instead of 12.
and he would be able to start throwing next week. And Kyle's hopeful that he'd be there for the start of the season. If you listen to the press conferences, though, Brock is just taking it day by day. The reporter was trying to get him to kind of answer like with a firm answer, like, "Are you going to be ready?" And Brock's just like, "Whatever, dude, whatever. God willing." He's a very God fearing person, and he's putting everything in his hands. So, and I respect that because I agree with that, lifestyle wise. But
He
uh,
will not be rushed by Kyle or anyone.
no, or should he? That's like
No,
telling somebody, "Hey, I need you back to work. I know you just had your knee surgery, Aaron, but I'm going to need you back right after surgery. I know your knee is immobile and swollen and purple and has, two cuts in it from the surgery, but we're going to need you back full time." Like, no, you can
he
fire
learned
me.
his lesson from somebody coached by an offshoot of this coaching tree, Mike McDaniel and Tua in Miami. And, they kind of forced Tua back too early. And, that's something that may end up being a huge thing for his career. I don't know. We'll see, but it's certainly not looking good at this point for Tua, I don't think.
Somebody told me that I must F the police when I mentioned them. All I'm saying is, I'm just saying there's people that you can look up to in the world more than just athletes. I think athletes are the worst sometimes of us because they get money and then they become maybe something that they're not. So
Did you see what Steve Supremo said? Kyle announced the depth chart by the order of the press conference. Well, actually, the order of the press conference was Kyle, Brock, Sam, Trey. And what I said was that
Kyle's
could be
starting
the
quarterback.
no. I was saying that's the reverse order of the starting QB for week one. So if you reverse that, you got Trey, Sam, Brock, Kyle. In other words, if Trey gets hurt, then they stick in Darnold week one. Purdy probably won't be ready, so he'd be the third quarterback. And if Purdy got injured, stick in Kyle. So that's what I was saying. That's the reverse order of operations for week one starters. That's my prediction.
I agree with you 100% on that Terradome, by the way. Just let you know. Jim Everett, somebody was asking him how many Super Bowls he won. Jim Everett, friggin' the Niners owned his ass in the playoffs in '89. That was the play that he sat down. He thought he was about to get sacked. He just sat on the ground. So uh, let's talk the Niners. Santa Clara is going to host the 2026 Super Bowl. Can the 49ers make it to the 2026 Super Bowl? I mean, I would like them to get to the Super Bowl this year, but can this window survive that long of current players and hopefully be? You imagine getting home field advantage every game. You don't leave the Bay Area after December till to the end of February to mid-February. That would be an incredible situation. Will it happen? Probably not, but it's definitely something I'd be hopeful for. What's your take? Because you're a Bay Area guy.
Whether we'll be there or not, I mean, put
No,
it this
whether
way.
what you think about it being the announced that it's going to be there.
Oh, it's incredible. It's great for the Bay Area. It's great for the 49ers. It's more revenue. If we do happen to make it, it's home field advantage for the Super Bowl. It'll be tough to make it, though. I mean, that's where this window starts to look a little more shaky. 2025, 2026 seasons. Even 2024, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
Allison said the
But
Niners window will be open for another 10 years. Yeah, if they have a great
that,
quarterback.
if Lance steps up, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great. I mean, we got 120 million bucks to upgrade the luxury suites for Levi's to make them really plush for all those fat cat corporate sponsors, the big money. And that'll help us make more money for years to come. And that helps us to pay signing bonuses and have a full payroll and all the things that help us to be more competitive as a team from a financial perspective. That'll have long-term help for the Niners.
Steve Zabrimo says our window will be open if we keep rotating quarterbacks every third year. I know, right? That's what it seems like. Just have a cheap quarterback and then build a roster out. That's what it seems like they feel comfortable doing every single year. But if you have an 11, if you have an elite quarterback, even if the rest of your team isn't quite up to stuff. I mean, look at Aaron Rodgers sometimes. He'd have a really, crusty, bad defense. And yet he's Aaron Rodgers. So, and I know we beat him all the time, but sometimes it matters, man. I'm sure Mahomes, down the road, if the Chiefs start to fall off, if he's the constant, he's just so good. As long as him and Andy Reid are together, they're going to win Super Bowls. If Andy Reid was to leave that situation, I think it would make a big difference. I'll look at it like this. I feel like Kyle, and a lot of people are going to crap on me for this. I think Kyle, in a lot of ways, is like Andy Reid until he got his quarterback. Like he was the guy that choked. He didn't win. He was the guy that had all these great offensive players under him and quarterbacks, but they could never get over the top. And then he finally got Mahomes, and then he became, a Hall of Fame coach. I feel like Kyle's on the same path. If Kyle could ever get one of these quarterbacks to be the next great quarterback, Hall of Fame level, Kyle will be held in the same regard as Andy Reid. He's already a really incredible coach.
Yeah, I was arguing with an Eagles fan on the timeline, or Eagles troll, whatever. But and I was saying basically that Kyle just needs a QB before we can really know what he is as a head coach. And he's like, oh, blah, 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 denying. And I was like, well, just look at Andy Reid. He couldn't win, in Philly. And as soon as he got Mahomes, boom, he did it. So, any Eagles fan should know that, because Donald McNabb was good, but not good when he went head to head against Tom Brady. So, what are you going to do?
Luke Luna says in the end, if Trey is willing to stay, if Purdy gets a year-long injury at any point down the road, I think he could come in and never let it go of the job, but not now. It's it's a fair point. It's a solid point. That's a solid point. Yeah, if he gets a long look, that's why I think them not playing him in his first year was a massive mistake. Now I understand we went to the NFC Championship game against the Rams, but we didn't. Oh, sorry. Hold on a sec. Hold down
Hey,
here. But
now I can say bad things about Aaron. He can't hear me.
uh,
Oh, damn.
he could. He didn't. We didn't win, and I don't know. It just in the end of the day, Jimmy really was the reason what we lost that NFC Championship game. What would Trey done if he would have been in the same position? I just felt like it was a lost year, and then of course last year happens. It was like the worst possible scenario where all the quarterbacks got hurt. So yeah. If you have any, you can add anything if you want.
No, I mean, yeah, Jimmy was bad in the NFC Championship game against the Rams. Trent Williams had a sprained ankle. Jaquiski Tart dropped the
The
drop
interception.
Tart. Yeah, that was big. And just the Rams stacked the box and dared Jimmy to throw deep, and he couldn't or wouldn't do it.
There was a
So
lot of open plays in that game too. A lot of people said, especially that Brandon Ayuk, that but Jimmy was hurt too,
yeah, it's thumb and shoulder.
thumb and
Yeah.
shoulder. So we were, that's you look back. Hindsight's 2020. So we can't really look. It's over. It happened. The Rams got their chip, and now they're going to be mired in mediocrity for a while because they really don't have a roster other than their quarterback, their slot receiver, and their defensive tackle, which are all three really good players, but they're not. I just don't see anything this year from them. But then again, we could be wrong. I mean, it is a division foe, and they always play each other well. So, everybody's talking about the 49er or the VHS tapes is where you can watch Jim Everett. Unfortunately, the 49ers last Super Bowl is the only way you're going to watch it is if on a VHS tape. So we can't really talk too much on that one.
No, they're all on YouTube. They're all here.
I watch them all the time when I feel bad about the 49ers. I go and watch their old glory. Chokehold on Bosa. Yeah, don't get me started on that one, Tommy Huxley. I'll never get over the fact that he's in front of the ref, literally getting his throat completely squished and nothing. Nothing. So yeah, I agree on that one. Let's see what else we got. Yeah.
Well, they were, like you said. I mean, Purdy was pretty careful when they asked him about whether he'd start. About just saying, "I don't know. We'll see." He wasn't gonna make any kind of promises. I mean, it was earlier in the off season where they, asked him, and he said, I don't even know if I'll play this season." The Yahoo reporter.
Yeah, and then
And
everybody went
now,
crazy with that one. Yeah.
and now he's kind of pretty much saying the same thing. He's saying not that he doesn't know if he'll play, but he doesn't know when he'll play this season. And I think that's kind of what you and I have been thinking this whole time.
Yeah.
4 weeks on IR.
Anything with the elbow is huge, man. Like it's a big deal. It's an elbow injury. He throws with his arm. It's huge. It's different if it would have been like, his non-throwing arm or some other injury. He's literally, that's his moneymaker right there. If his elbow ain't right and you rush him back and you lose him for another season, that's on you as an organization for being careless. So I'm glad that his faith is what it is, and he has conviction not only in his faith but in his own manhood, that he'll tell the organization, like, look, when I'm ready is when I'm ready, and if you're going to threaten my job for it, then tough titties, I won't play. And I'm glad that he's like that. The Bosa situation eventually is going to come to a head real soon here with the season with training camp approaching at the end of July. Do you really see anything other than the usual, where the Niners will wait till right at the very end and then he'll be ready for the probably first or second day of camp?
I think it's the usual.
Yeah,
just
I
like
don't
they
see it.
did with Kittle, just like they did with Fred. I think the only one they signed early was Trent Williams, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was a given though. I don't know how I know they try to mess with him a little bit too, with his
And you had
contract.
mentioned OTAs. There's OTAs tomorrow on Thursday. There's OTAs next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. And the following week,
Yeah, they had like all three
Monday the
quarterbacks
5th.
and Kyle all in interviews yesterday. I thought the interviews were all pretty telling as far as all the quarterbacks just saying a lot but not really saying much. Very,
Yeah.
very non-sound bitey.
Yeah, then Monday the 5th, Tuesday the 6th, and Thursday the 8th. I mean, I think the big one from Lance was he's still super happy to be here and doesn't wish he had been traded, supposedly. I mean,
Niner Sickness Podcast says, kidding aside, I hope Trey Lance has a wonderful season in this year and shows all the haters that he's a good as advertised when he was drafted. But if not, at least we have Brock Purdy in the wings. Yeah, it sucks though.
absolutely.
I don't know if Ryan Hensley said this, but it's or maybe it was somebody else. But like, only problem is when you have this kind of situation where you don't have a certified starter until you kind of have that, you're always going to be in this position of like getting really, really far, but maybe never really, getting to the top as far as winning a Super Bowl. I think once you figure that position out, it's the most important position in sports is the quarterback of an NFL franchise. It's more important than baseball, basketball, whatever. NFL quarterback, you have that figured out and you have your head coach figured out, everything else can fall into place around it. So, um, as much as I like that we have one guy and another guy in the wings, I would love for one guy to take hold of it and never look back. So that's just my opinion. I'm sure a lot of fans agree. Um, the Purdy rule, we have the Purdy rule that happened. NFL teams will now be able to carry three quarterbacks on game day and not be, they will not have it go against their active roster. So I, everybody in the NFL, if they ever have a situation that's similar, can thank Brock Purdy for that.
Yeah, I saw an Eagles fan crying about it, saying that the Niners players and fans had cried enough that the NFL changed the rule, and he said, "Well, why didn't they do it when Carson Wentz got knocked out by Clowney, and then the old guy, still I should have looked up his name, McCown, thank you, Luke
Tore his
McCown,
hamstring.
David, tore his hammy and could barely play." And I was like, look, it's a little bit different where, the Eagles only got into those 2019 playoffs because they were in the NFC least and they had a 9-7 record. And the Seahawks, who won that game, lost the next game. Neither of those teams were going to the Super Bowl. It's not like this year where both of our teams had won 2 playoff games. The winner was going to the Super Bowl. And the NFL did it because they lost ratings. It's not because anybody cried. It's because they were crying about losing all this money. And so you can't really compare
that was
the two
a horrible
situations.
optic NFC Championship game. I don't think people realize how bad that was for the NFL.
Yeah, because the worst part of a football game is the time between the game's over when the game actually ends, and that was 52 minutes in that game, which is of game time.
That game was over
like over 2 hours of real time.
Yeah.
So they don't want that to. And I had an Eagles fan in the chat earlier today, and they were saying, actually, I agree. I don't want to see a running back or a wide receiver throwing the football either. So he agreed with that rule.
There's a lot of people that crap on that idea that we were just complaining, but there is some fans that say it would be interesting how the game would have went if we would have had all things even. So, but it's over with. They got to the Super Bowl, they lost. So in the end, it didn't really affect us.
What'd you think about? The?
Go ahead.
Kyle saying that Lance got all the first string reps so far, but Kyle's saying that Darnold was going to start to get more.
Mm-hmm.
You think it'll ever be 50-50? I mean,
I don't know. That's only Kyle can answer that. Just to be a jerk, maybe Kyle will do it. I'd be like, watch this. Watch me screw with the media. Hey, we're going based off the split. I think it'd be more of like a 60-40 split, maybe.
based off the stats I saw from the one day so far that it came out, I was like Darnold was 11 for 15, uh, Lance was 12 for 17, but Lance apparently had two incompletions that weren't his fault, so it was really more like 14 out of 17. And Darnold had a fumble and an interception. So based off that, I don't think they ever should
Sounds
get
more like it, more like the player that he's always been, right?
Yeah, shocking. So they said he did well at the beginning when things were kind of basic, but as things got more complex, I guess he was seeing ghosts out there again. So.
That's a hard offense to learn. And for all the people that said that he already learned it, he hasn't. He's still learning it. So that was an inaccurate take, whoever made that claim up. And then we have the new kickoff rule that happened. We have teams now can fair catch it within inside the 5-yard line and get it at the 25-yard line. I don't really care. I really don't care. As long as you got a guy who can kick field goals. I know they recorded the field goals in camp the other day, and both kickers had the same percentage of misses.
Look, we want a guy who can kick it out of the back of the end zone. Why? To get a touchback. So if they're downing it in the 5 and getting a touchback, why are we minding that? We're not. What we're minding at is if we can't get it out of the end zone and they're gashing us with big returns. That's what we mind. So yeah, I'm with you 100% on that. Beto asked me who's the better quarterback, Joe Montana or Steve Young. I mean, it's really hard because obviously I watched them both.
Beto's a young guy. He likes Young over Montana.
Yeah, I'm kind of like you. I like Montana on the field. I like Young off the field. I mean, I'll say Steve Young had the tools to be the better quarterback. Like Steve Young had the higher ceiling. He was faster. He had a bigger arm. He could bounce off of people and keep going. But it's hard because Steve Young didn't have as good an offensive line, didn't have as good of a defense. Weapons, he did in 94, but a lot of the later years, the weapons weren't as good. We lost Ricky Waters, we lost Deion Sanders. Everything kind of fell apart after that. So 96, 97, 98. And then, you got the concussions. So, I mean, I think Steve Young definitely had the potential to be better. He had the best Super Bowl with the 6 touchdowns and no interceptions. We mentioned, and maybe Montana would have had 6 if they had left him in. They pulled him in that Denver Super Bowl. So you could say Montana might have done that anyway. So, but, to go 4-0 in Super Bowls and never throw a pick in Super Bowls. And, and he did it before Jerry Rice. He won 2 of those.
Yep, he won 2 Super Bowls before Jerry
Rice. So
Montana was always the constant in all those Super Bowls, regardless of the team around him. And I think
I like the idea of Steve Young better, but when push comes to shove, I still give the tip.
I think Steve Young was a more versatile player and more athletic. He was thicker.
He was more of this modern build. I think Steve Young would be better in today's game.
But if you ask me who I would take in a clutch situation, 10 times out of 10, I would take Montana.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and that's I want to win a Super Bowl. I have 3 minutes to go, and we're down whatever many points. I'm taking Steve Young 10 times out of 10, or no, Montana.
Especially 81, the first one, the catch against the Cowboys and beating the Bengals in the Super Bowl.
See, we can have
he did it with less.
Montana was made more clutch.
Yeah, I mean, Young did it in 94, but if you just look at all those players that were on that team, it was crazy on both sides of the ball with, Young or with Rice, John Taylor, Brent Jones, Ricky Waters, William Floyd, Deion, Eric Davis,
Ricky Jackson.
I mean, also, but then the 2 safeties.
McDonald and
Merton Hanks. Yeah, doing the funky chicken. I mean, that team was so stacked, and so I just feel like Montana could do it with less. Is really what it came down to.
Luke Luna said if Montana stayed healthy, we'd have 6, not 5, and possibly 7. I know. I think about that because the Niners were in the NFC Championship game a lot, man. They were in the NFC Championship game a lot. The Niners have the most. I think they have the most NFC Championship game appearances in history by a long shot. They
and
win
more
all
than
those.
any AFC championship
They
too.
would be like the Celtics of the NFL if they would actually cashed in every single time. But the fact that they were in it all the time says a lot about it. I know that doesn't really sit well with fans that we were in it. All I'll say is that
Steve Young is LeBron and Michael Jordan is Joe Montana. There's some parallels there a little bit. Joe was a killer. He was an assassin. Steve Young was more
Steve's
likable.
delivery
So
always
I
was
see
the
some
one
I see
thing
some
that
parallels there.
was the one thing that
But
bothered me. His
the
long
one thing
delivery
though
as a
is like
defender.
LeBron's been to 10 and Jordan only went to 6 and Steve only went to 1 and Montana went to 4. But yeah, I mean,
And
I see some
LeBron, how
parallels.
many more
It's never
extra
going to be
seasons has LeBron played?
yeah,
And how
it's
many
never
times
going to
has
be
he hopped
exact.
quads in order to, get it's again, it's those conversations that will never be answered because you can't play different eras against each other. So,
No. No, that's what somebody was trying to tell me that Drew Bledsoe was better than Jimmy Garoppolo. He's like, look, they had the same stats in like 1999 and 2019. I'm like, dude, you cannot compare. I mean, if anything, that makes Bledsoe way, way better because he didn't have the QB protections, the wide receiver protections, any
I
stats
think
from 99.
physical gifts wise, his arm was way better than Jimmy's.
Yeah.
And he was a
And
big quarterback.
yeah, and he was good. And I'm telling you that 27 TDs and 13 interceptions or 14, whatever it was. In 99, that was really good. In 2019, that was like maybe top 10. Maybe. It was like maybe
Luke,
11 or
do you
12.
have Niner Sickness podcast blocked? He can't see
No,
the
no, no. They're
comments.
just in different things. Luke's
Oh,
in
one might be
yours.
in my chat, one might be in Ted's chat. That's probably
Yeah,
what it is.
that's what it is.
Anything else you got going on the channel this week?
I got, let's see here. Tomorrow, I got a couple things. I got to get back to that week. I was just saying, I was in the OTA stuff, but let me get back and come on. Week. There we go. Still can't get it straight here. There we go. So I have Bob Rose, who's a Saints reporter and content creator, coming on tomorrow at 11 Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And tomorrow night, Raj is having me on his show at 6 Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern.
Oh, you're on with Raj tomorrow? That's awesome.
Yeah. Every now and then we
today's
hook up.
Today's been an interesting day. This is my 4th stream. It'll be my 5th. Will be on Friday with Mr. Catman himself,
Jason
Hurley, and then that's it. It's going to be the regular streams, and that's all about it. That's all it's going to be because I have to go back to work, and I don't know how I'm going to feel even Monday with the NWO stream. If I'm beat ass tired, I might sit it out, and that's nothing against the guys. I'm just being honest with you. I haven't worked in 6 months. I'm heavy, and I'm out of shape. So if I decide to go to bed at like 7:00 at night, don't hate me. You'll be in good hands. We still got the other 3 guys, but let's wrap this puppy up. It's been a great, fun, full day of streaming. I always enjoy my time with Ted. Thank you for the chat, for being lively. Sorry I didn't get to a lot of your questions, but it's been kind of a spirited conversation today. We all have our opinions on everything, but at the end of the day, other than Jim Everett in the chat, we're all 49er fans in here. So everybody take care. Have a great rest of your night, and go Niners.